Number two is to find moments rather than exit events. Find moments rather than exit events. When I used to live in Silicon Valley about 15 years ago or so, hard to believe that time flies. Shout out to y'all up in the Bay. We would talk about exit events. Exit events are times when something ends, hence the exit, and you get some type of resource back or reward, and that could take in a bunch of different forms. Your kids growing up and moving out of the house where you have an empty nest, that's an exit event. My company, Cuddler, with my co-founders, shout out to y'all, getting acquired, it's about a decade ago now. It was acquired. That's an exit event. They bought the company, they gave all three of us a check. That's an exit event. An exit event is when you have vested into a particular company. That means investing in it through being a employee, or one of the founders, as I was, or you literally have stock in it, and and then it suddenly goes public. It's on the stock market, and it's worth a certain amount of money. And you decide to sell that. That's an exit event too. An exit event is something where there's a often dramatic change that happens, and then you are rewarded or given something based on the work or based on the investment you've done in the past. That's what an exit event is. Retirement. If it's a good retirement, particularly, sometimes we're forcibly retired. But if it's a good retirement, quote unquote, that's an exit event. So often we wait for the exit events to change our lives. One of the reasons why, as the kids say, particularly when I was younger, my passport stayed on pivot. I got to as many places as I could, particularly before I had kids, got married. I went to as many places as I could, particularly here in America. And that was because even at a young age, back in my, I'd say 20s, even late teens, I kept hearing people who are older, probably a little bit older than what I am now, hearing people when I was older, when they were older, talk about how they were going to postpone that trip to such and such, or they were going to visit and do such and such and learn how to do such and such when they retire. Some of them died. Not all of us make it to, our 60s, which is retirement here in America. In seeing that, even seeing folks who waited, postponed that rest, that solitude, what was going to be restorative, they postponed it, not because they had obligation to their kids or because their resources weren't able to do it, just because they felt a way about it and they said, I have tomorrow. I'll wait to this exit event. And then you turn 59 and a half, or you turn 65, or whatever your number is. And suddenly, magically, you're going to go on this world tour. Most of us don't have that for several reasons that are way too deep from this podcast. Way too deep. They will do a future episode about that. My point is that seeing them, I realized I need to experience this now. Doesn't have to be right now. Particularly when I was a broke grad student back in my 20s. Doesn't have to be right now, but I need to do this. As I'm in middle age now, again, I'm a young Gen X. I don't look back and say, "Oh, I should." No, I, I, with my means, I saw as much stuff as possible. When my kids ask me, "Well, this country's like this," I'm like, "Well, actually, it's not like that." The second time I went there, this was the experience there. Now, the first time I went there, it was like this. Then I went there a few years later, and it was like this. And no, they don't actually hold their silverware like that. They hold this, all kinds of game and opportunities that I can pass on to my kids. I'm giving this travel example because hope that's like the simplest one I can think of. But we do that every single day. You're sitting on the couch, you have a moment of quiet. You could take a quick nap. You could rest your eyes. You could daydream. Shout out to Dr. Natalie Nixon, author of The Creativity Leap. Talks a lot about daydreaming. You can space out. You can, if you got kids, you can listen to your kids playing. If it's you have a window nearby, you can watch the birds or listen to nature. If you're lucky enough to live by water, I live in the desert, so if you're lucky enough to live by water, you can hear the water outside. If the weather's doing crazy things, you can listen to the weather. And so many of us don't take that pause. That matters too. Those moments, call them micro moments, that they restore equilibrium, even if it's just for a second, even if it's like a 5 minute cat nap, or not even nap where those moments where you're just so tired, you just close your eyes, and you don't go to sleep, and you just sit there, just still for 30 seconds until your kid asks for something, or your job or the people that you work with need something from you, or the bell goes off and you have to get the dinner out the oven, or you realize that you have to head off to work. That's fine. But we wait for these exit events. We wait for, I'm going to go ahead and work my ass off. And then I'm going to take this 2 week, all expenses paid vacation. And again, I get to opine about, opine, forget the word out of my mouth, opine about that all day. But we assume that we're going to be suddenly in rest mode by the time we get that vacation. We assume we're going to get that vacation. We assume not only from a mortality standpoint, not only from a physical, I'm able to do this traveling standpoint, that's a whole nother conversation. This body is not guaranteed. I mean, from the standpoint of you might burn yourself out. You might be doing that mental damage, mental health damage to yourself before you even get to that vacation. So the focus is on finding moments rather than being big events. I know personally, for me and my co parenting partner, if there weren't spaces that were built into it, at least I can speak for myself, I'd be burnt out by now. I'm at home with the kids every single day. After 11 years of that, it's just getting to the point now where I do have enough room to maneuver, and here it's a silent place here, so I actually have space just because a lot of personal dynamics have changed. But for 11 years, yeah. What happens when you don't take those breaks, when you don't find spaces for solitude? What you're doing, and you know that in your heart is not sustainable, and you're banking it on some exit event in the future. What if the exit event never happens? Then we think about how much we're grinding and how much that matters as far as us taking those breaks, finding those micro moments instead of focusing just on the exit events. One of my favorite books, well, again, one of my favorite people, it's so tiny. The Pocket, Pema Children. Let me get that. There we go. Focus on our beautiful face. Shout out to Pema. Fantastic little book. It's something you can slip in your pocket. I've slipped it in my um, in my blazer pocket, particularly when I was going into contentious meetings and rough family gatherings. It slipped right in there. Like I need a passage right now. I did an episode last week about how to have a peaceful, affordable holiday. I talked about that more. The link is right below. Long story short, Pema is fantastic. She is a Buddhist monk that didn't get into Buddhism officially until she's probably around my age. I think she's about 85. So, yeah, got deep into it. Is originally from America, so she has a Western perspective on these Eastern philosophies. Has a great way of bringing things down to earth, particularly, again, I'm American myself. And each of these little passages It is tiny. That's the whole thing. The whole thing. That's it. I think there's about 100 of them. Yeah, there's 110 of them, 111. Fantastic little book. I think it's like $10, $9. Go grab it. Walk around with it. It's really focused on understanding mindfulness and solitude. It is not heavily focused on Buddhist philosophies as far as talking about Buddhism per se. It's more about taking these philosophies and making them applicable to your life or more applicable. Fantastic book, one of my favorites. It's tiny. Just walk around with it, particularly again, if you're doing the family gatherings. Don't leave home without it like American Express. All right, live Q&A. This was about a year and a half ago as well. Improving inner peace. This live show was about mental health, how to get grounded. It goes much deeper than some of the stuff I'm talking about today because there's certain specific aspects that we go deep on. I think there's also some good questions from the audience that pop in there too, if I remember correctly. It was about a year and a half ago. One of my favorite episodes. Be sure and check it out if you want to go deeper. What moments are you guys taking advantage of? How are y'all showing up where you're able to frankly show up for yourself? How are you resting within the chaos of whatever your life is? And I don't mean chaos is a bad thing, just life is dynamic and uncertain and nutty sometimes. How are you taking care of yourself within that? Are you waiting for the big vacation when this money comes in or when the kids move out the house and all that stuff? Or are you finding spaces of solace within your life? I know, in my opinion, one is way more sustainable and realistic than the other. Be realistically, and we'll talk about this in a second, you grinding out the time is not realistic. When people say, "Oh, every day is a grind," some of that is a choice. We have moments where we grind. I had a moment when when I ground. Is that the past tense of grind? I have 2 degrees of journalism. I don't know what it is. Let's say grind. I grinded a couple days ago, and not in a good way. And it was at a late night. It was like that. A lot of people, some of you that are watching the show, needed my support. I was happy to come through. But then I rested some today. There's always part of a cycle. So how are you building in those little moments instead of waiting for a big moment to rest? I'll get off my soapbox. I'm an entrepreneurial coach, as you can tell, but put my coaching hat on. Damon Brown, I'm here to help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Watch it Bring Your Worth TV, coming to you Wednesdays, live, Q&A. Jump below with the comments and questions every Wednesday, most Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You won't get it through my mouth. Subscribe to Bring Your Worth TV below. I'm cracking myself up today.